people only see as much of Shams or as much of Rumi as they have seen themselves. What got me into it, I was very young. I think I must have been about 8 years old. My cousin's husband, he played the sitar in front of me, and I was blown away. I'm like, you go towards the music, the spiritual music, it can really drown you. You know, it's very deep. It's like a whirlpool you go inside. Of all these people, my grandfather, he stands out amongst everybody else. Waking up every day at 4, you know, meditating for an hour in darkness. And then reading the Quran and then reading the Masnavi. So tremendous and very silent guy, very introvert. And so he used to like give me like the older students' papers to, you know, mark. It's like, "Kisi ko batana nahi, you mark these papers, I don't have time." Wow. So I was a very good student. And again, I was studying because I wanted to know the truth. You know, like maybe I find it here, maybe I find it there. Maybe they all add up at some point and I come to a conclusion. Yeah, so I was focused on studies and then I had to start work at the same time. And then again, there came a point where I couldn't do all of this, you know. So then I had to choose work over studies and focus on the business. Yeah, I'm not sure if I should say these things on TV, but yeah, so like people would come to me and say stuff that were like answers to the some question I would have. It was not like they, you know, it was just random. It was the universe talking to me. I was in a wheelchair for months and I was on crutches for months, and then at the same time I had to run the business. So yeah, there came points where I would just stare into the mirror. Man, I know it's within you, but tell me, hey, Kia.
Today we have a very, very special guest, someone who I met, I think, मेरे ख्याल से कुछ 2 साल पहले, and I was blown away with his company. Very untraditional sort of person in terms of, you know, just field of work में I am working and he's working, and the whole background. I've learned like a lot. So बहुत बड़ी मुश्किल से मैंने इनको जो है वो मनाया है, but we'll try to dig deep into the whole sort of world of Moez and see what we can get the knowledge out and everything. Thank you for coming, Moez.
Thank you for inviting.
बड़ी मुश्किल से जो है I was like pushing you, आ जाएं. But it's really good to have you. I think I literally, like, I don't have any sort of format or anything. I just wanted to know who you are. Like, I don't know if you remember when I came to your house and we just sat for like मेरे ख्याल से 11 बजे से लेके रात को 2-3 बजे तक, and that was our first meeting.
Yes, it was.
So I just wanted to sort of start with if you can talk a little bit about your upbringing. What was your childhood and especially your sort of family? You know, कैसा माहौल था घर का?
What I can remember is it was a very spiritual house to begin with. Out of all these people, my grandfather, he stands out amongst everybody else. Perhaps he had the most influence on me. Waking up every day at 4, you know, meditating for an hour in darkness. And then reading the Quran and then reading the Masnavi. So tremendous and very silent guy, very introvert. So yeah, the childhood has been bittersweet.
But was he like very उस तरह बहुत ज़्यादा पढ़े लिखे, or like what was his background?
No, he was an average man.
सही.
Yeah, an average man, but a very spiritual person. I would practice it all the time. That's all I remember from him.
सही.
Yeah.
And what was his sort of profession?
He worked in an office.
Okay. So he was like a very normal,
very common man.
Say. So he was not into this whole, जैसे भी आजकल meditation or.
No, not at all. Not at all. He was a very common man, but that's all he lived for.
Say. And at what time, at what age did he sort of passed away?
I'm very bad with dates, but it's probably been about 20 years maybe now.
And other than that, like, how was the household? I met your mother as well, and she still feels like your friend as well, you know.
Exactly.
It's just like
we have a very candid relationship at home. It's full democracy, if there's any democracy in our house. Also, we've been into sports. My uncles, you know, so they've been into sports. So sports, exercise, human anatomy. My mom is a manual therapist, the physical therapist. So
you have a very very nice combination. मतलब एक तरफ it's a music और वो भी a spiritual music and the meditation and then like sports
is
and
completely
then like
the opposite.
Physical. It's just like going from one to another to another. It's just like
actually it is very hard to bring these two together.
Because,
once I was invited to a place and I was asked to play there and these guys saw me and then they're like, we thought आप instrument तोड़ने वाले आप तो बजाने वाले like even they couldn't connect. How could you actually be doing both? So it's completely the opposite. The feeling of blood pumping around and that, and then all of a sudden a completely different world. But I think it's through contradictions that you can expand from the inside.
Because normally, like if you see, at least जितने लोगों को मैं जानता हूँ, like if someone is into the whole bodybuilding or the health,
they're very desensitized
it's
to,
like a different,
they get desensitized to these spiritual stuff to some extent. But it's going on. It's still the same, so I have to carry both along. But I think it makes me enjoy both more now.
Because altogether वो दोनों ही different domains है ना. But when you enter into another one, so you feel like it's disconnected.
The thing is, if you go towards the music, the spiritual music, it can really drown you. It's very deep. It's like a whirlpool. You go inside. And if you go towards, the bodybuilding, eating and sports and all of that stuff, then you might tend to forget that side of you, So, taking them along together is not an easy job. But I think if I'm, more fit, I can enjoy the music more. And if I'm spiritually more connected, then I can,
enjoy the life as well.
Enjoy the life as well and be more connected to the body.
And what are your sort of early childhood memories of music and like how was the house looks like?
So I am the only person probably in my entire khandan who went into music. We have nobody in our immediate family who was into music. What got me into it, I was very young. I think I must have been about 8 years old. My cousin's husband, he played the sitar in front of me. And I was blown away. I'm like, I could not come out of it, So
that was your first memory, matlab?
That was my first memory of somebody playing live in front of me. And it was like, it was this transcendence, it was, it blew me away. And now that I think it was completely unconscious, but I knew that this is going to stay, everything will come and go, but this is it.
At that time, like you were like...
And even later on, we were at somebody's house and the guy used to play the sitar, but he didn't. And then they had some... there was no YouTube, there was none of these things. So he put a CD of the music and I was like just glued into it, couldn't come out of it. So he came and went and told my mom, is like, this kid, there's something unusual with him, Like it was like this was it, like couldn't think beyond it. Yeah, it's...
And when did you started, like what was your first instrument?
I started with the sitar. And it's very interesting. My mom had brought us two briefcases. He brought one for my elder brother and he brought one for me. And I'm like, I'm a young boy, briefcase kya karne hai? Like, what do you need a briefcase? You need the bag. So I didn't use it. So once my mom's cousin was over and my brother had the briefcase with him. It was like, nice briefcase, man. So I said, I got one, do you want it? He's like, acha. I'm like, it's brand new. So then I sold it to him there. And
actually
I sold it, yeah. And so I bought a sitar that was basic, very cheap one.
But like, did you went on your own to the bazaar and just like...
No, because I knew at home that I really wanted one. One day I was back from school and I went for a nap. I woke up and there was this whole show at home. Come, mom has gotten you something. So then she'd brought me a sitar with the money. So that was my first sitar. And yeah, my second and third instrument, I would collect all the EDs, and everybody, whoever wanted to give me some ED, I'm like, just give me cash, don't buy me stuff, I need cash. So then I collected all these things, and then there was a workshop of this instrument maker around my grandparents' house. So we went there with my uncle, and I'm like, I want this one and I want this one. How much? And when he told me the price, I had the money for one, not for both. And then my uncle explained to him how I actually saved so much money. The guy's like, you take both.
Wow.
Yeah, so I still have those instruments.
And at that time, like the bachas around you, like what were?
They were into pop music and like all the other stuff.
But how like what was the feedback you were getting?
I didn't play it for anybody. Even till probably around 5-6 years ago, people who knew me for 10 years, they didn't know I play instruments.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were all in your room.
Just for me, it was like a path. It was like prayers. It was going into a room, silent, and sit for hours, light up a candle until the candle burns. I would just keep playing. And there was an incident that brought me a little bit out of myself. And, so somebody was over, and I don't know what happened. And they ended up listening to me playing the music. And I'd made a little cave where I had my instruments. There was dimmer lights, set the zone, and I would do my usual practice. And they sat there silently, and then they listened to it, and later on they're like, you're very selfish. I'm like, that's the first time somebody told me I'm selfish. I'm like, why? They're like, this it really like hits you, but you've kept it only for yourself. Why aren't you sharing it? I never thought about it that way, that I have to share it.
For you, it was not a profession.
No, it wasn't. And I still don't really want it to be a profession. It's always been for my own heart, and it always will be. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of charity maybe. Yeah. You have to share from whatever you learn.
But how did you start learning? Because at that time, you said कि YouTube भी नहीं था.
Yeah.
कोई teacher भी probably शायद इतना
No, not
so like, did you just like start?
There was no online access. Just mindlessly play, and I didn't know how to tune it. I didn't have any teacher.
No lessons, nothing.
Nothing, kuch bhi nahi. And I just mindlessly kept playing, and wherever I would see a video, I would try to mimic what they were doing. And then later on, as my listening abilities became better, and when my ears got more trained, then I would be able to connect better with and then I would be able to play more or less the same stuff. If I had a teacher, most likely I probably would be on a world stage by now, the amount of practice and the amount of playing that I've done. But from the other point of view, if I had a teacher, I might not have discovered myself so much, because I wasn't playing music. I was, like sitting and just contemplating. It was an instrument of contemplation. It never was music. And later on, I had a friend from Hunza who played the Rubab.
There's a whole community out there.
Yeah. And so I'm left-handed. So I said, man, I need a left-hand Rubab. So then we ordered one for me, which was for left-handed people. So I played with him a couple of months. And after a couple of months, he didn't know anything to teach me. I'm like, who's better than you? He's like, my Ustad is like a good master. He's in Hunza, lives in Hunza. So I said, you know what, next time you're going to Hunza, I'm going with you. And I took off from school, and this guy was going.
What was your age?
Must have been probably 16 maybe.
Wow.
16. So went to Hunza, and back then Hunza was Kacha road, and I'm still dreading those roads. I don't know how I made it there, And went there. This man in Hunza these guys were talking, and I'm sitting there, I'm doing this with my hands, I'm doing this, and then he goes to the guy who took me there, who was a student, still a good player. It's like, one day you learn from this guy instead of teaching, And 20 years something on later, actually that Ustad also is like learning now from me.
Wow.
So I was really, I stayed about a year there. Open, he had.
You stayed there?
Yeah, I stayed. I told the friend who took me there, I said, you go back, because he had office to go to. So I'm staying back here.
Nee, but like you were in the school, the family.
Yeah, I took off.
Wow.
I was crazy about it. There was this Italian chap I made friends with in Hunza. And
but what did you tell your mom and
no questions, Madness is a standard at home, you follow your calling.
So no,
not at all, yeah.
So you took a gap year basically.
Yeah, I took a gap year, and I probably some of my deepest reflections happened, in those mountains.
And you were 16, 17?
Yeah, 16.
Wow.
Wake up every day, see the Rakapushi go like, orange and then yellow and then completely white, sunset. Go open the shop. He had a bakery. Sweets, mithaiya वगैरह बेचते थे. So would be there with him the whole day. And रात को about 11 would close the shop and go home. And then they have these zikr mahfils. And so they get called pretty much, if not every day, then every other day.
But it was like some Sufi silsila, or is it like?
Yeah, they follow the traditions of Nasir Khusro.
Mm-hmm.
And most of their literature is around Nasir Khusro, and they have a practice which is called Charagh Roshan. So they light on an oil lamp, and until the oil lamp burns, these guys just play, and there's daf, and then they go into zikr.
That's what we see in the movies.
Yeah. No, it's intense. If you have not gone on spiritual journeys, so you would find people who would get, convulsions, and take them out of the room, pani lagao, wake them up.
Wow.
Yeah, some, and it's intense. It's intense.
And you were living with him as well?
So I was living at this chap who took me there. I was living at his cousin's place.
Yeah. And you were not paying anything?
Oh no, they were more than happy to have me.
Yeah.
No, they actually loved it, and now even whenever I go there, I'm like a family member, and they open these old albums. They see, look at you here, look at you here. So it was immense, and
because normally if you see like in Pakistan, if you talk to any musician ya koi bhi bacha jab ho, so it's like the core is actually the music. There is no like as such connection of spirituality ya phir mysticism as well.
No, for me, music from the beginning, it was, I knew that I will find myself through this. I will find who truly I am through this.
Wow.
And it's taken me to places. It's
but what is your sort of, so like I just want to understand, like, how did you know, I'm just like envisioning, I'm just like visualizing, like you're 8 years old, you're 10 years old. How did you know कि like this is some, like, so for normal it's just bas yaar I'm like cool mein lag raha hu, ye main bajaunga, bas like.
No, not at all.
Like, have you seen someone, have you talked to someone, or something happened, like any incident, like you have?
No, I think it's not, I probably did not choose music chose me. It was the other way around, it's like apne ye karna hai. It was not me deciding it. It was already decided
from shuru se.
Yeah. Because that kind of immense love for something just cannot come.
Just a passion.
Yeah, it's probably, society probably cannot bring that kind of passion for something. It has to be inside. Yeah, it's even now, if you tell me you can't play music anymore, I'm like, guys, I'm leaving the world. There's nothing to be there for.
Yeah. And usme bhi basically, so when you started like sort of doing the music and playing and Sara, so you sort of went into the whole Persian music and the whole like Sufi, because that's like mostly the shams and the brazes and
So the journey,
But like so it means like you were into the poetry as well, because like if you were playing to
so that's where my grandfather comes in now.
Say,
you know, like I always thought, what is this guy doing? You know, what's he after? Like, ye kya kar raha hai? And we had, you know, the Rumi literature was like the household stuff there. And Hunza mein, this is all that we were doing, you know.
Achha, so in Hunza as well, they were into the Rumi.
Yeah. It's there. The actual spiritual texts of the Hunzai tradition is Persian. It was only much later on that some Hunzai poets came, and even they also said the poetry in Persian.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just got expanded, and then I picked up other instruments, and you know.
And like when was the sort of the first time you sort of started reading, you know, and what was the first sort of text? Like, was it like Shams or like, you know?
So with the music, with these music comes the songs, the poetry. But you're reciting them as a young chap. You really don't know what you're reading, you know. You know there is something, but wo samajh nahi aata.
Whether you understand Persian or not.
Yeah, like you really quite don't, because they're talking about something inaudible, you know. It's something beyond words, and they're trying to bring it down to this reality. I read a text on a Rubab that was carved on the Rubab. But back then when I was in Hunza, there was a carving on it, and it said dry strings, dry wood, and dry skin on the Rubab. Where does the friend's sound come from? And it got me thinking, I'm like, hey, what is this guy trying to say? And I started meditating on those lines. Like, where does the sound actually come from? And then as I played, you know, went on and did my usual practice, kept meditating on it. Where does the sound? We know in physics, two objects vibrating or hitting this one, you know. I'm like, that's not where the sound comes from. But where does where sound comes from is where reality actually comes from. So if you find out where the sound comes from, you understand where the whole existence comes from.
Wow.
You know, so it's a
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you start like reading, you know, with a Rubab, so that was a Rubab or
that was a Rubab.
Rubab.
That was a Rubab.
But so what was how did you basically then started? Like what was the first book or more into the literature side? Because if you see, like, both of the worlds are like, it's not just music, it's not just literature, like you come and, you know.
So following in the footsteps of my grandfather remotely, I started.
But was there any time, like, जैसे वो होता है ना बचपन में कि वो बस आप सामने बैठ गए और वो आपको recite कर रहे हैं, पता नहीं, you were just like listening?
Not as much, but I started practicing the way my grandfather chose to practice from the very young age, and wake up again, you know, meditate and so on. So I was very much into all these prayers and all of that till the age of probably, I think maybe 16, 17, maybe less, 16-ish. And then I got really frustrated. I'm like, yaar, samajh nahi aa raha hai. What is this? Like, I want to know it. I, you know, don't want to just pass by. Acha, inhone ye bataya ki ye, and you know, that's it. And I want to really know. I want it alive. I want, you know, to feel it. And so I completely flipped from that way of practice, and then I had a probably good long time, maybe 6-7 years of being an agnostic. You know, like I went into like Bertrand Russell's, and started
where
reading
did that journey started? Like how?
So this is around when I was back from Hunza. When I was back from Hunza, and I'm like, yeah, samajh nahi aa raha. I want to actually find out, you know, ye kya, like, what are they talking about? And then I thought it's philosophy, so I went towards philosophy and started reading, like all these kids in school would be reading their, like school books, novels, like reading Will Durant and, thick books on philosophy, Stephen Hawking and whatnot. So very much into philosophy. And after a while I was more lost. I'm like, like this is not what I wanted to know. And then I still remember I was reading, the last book on philosophy that I was reading was the autobiography of Bertrand Russell. And talking, and he says, he has had a good time being in this world, and if he was given the opportunity to come live it again, he would do it again. I'm like, you know what, I am done with this stuff. I'm not coming back. So that was the end of the chapter for philosophy. And then as I went on, I realized these outside sources, they could point me to the direction, but there's no way anybody can tell me what I am looking for. And I knew it's all, I have to discover it inside myself. Yeah, so it just gets crazier.
And how, so those were the 6-ish sort of years.
Yeah.
So what was the first step of those sort of?
So we're going, being with a single mom since the age of 14, I've been working all along to support the family and
like normal sort of jobs.
Yeah, very basic jobs, and like done everything. Around probably 17, 18 years ago, I got into we had the sport background already, and mom was also into human anatomy. So I got into the gym business, exercise business, and after a while that gave me the financial freedom to even pursue what I wanted even more. Then all along these things were coming, and this poetry and the mysticism that I was following, it was just becoming more and more powerful over time. But still, the questions were not answered yet. The questions went on. Philosophy was done, but now, so daytime, all I was doing was training people, and the first few years, I, tried to get better at my job and study, physiology, nutrition, anatomy, training, and all of that stuff. But then it came a point where this thing was not letting me focus on anything. I had to find out. And so that's, in mornings I would be, till like 8 p.m. I was training people. 8 p.m. nobody could hear from me anymore. I would go to my little cave where the instruments were, play for hours, just meditate, read stuff, listen to stuff, and try to make sense out of what I was looking for. And it came to a point where things got really serious. I almost became like a psychopath. Like I would just stare into the mirror for hours and, just like, batao kaun ho kya hai, what is this whole thing, we need to find answers. And just a lot of synchronicities started happening around me. And soon I realized that there's a force that's trying to somehow direct me,
But what was that moment looks like?
So when I was a very small kid, a family friend we had who was a poet, he was with my mother, and he saw me and he started laughing.
Sorry.
And then my mom is like, what happened? He's like, nothing. He's like, no, aapne kuch dekha hai, like you've seen something. He's like, no, nothing. And then he's like, no, I'm insisting, tell me what it is. He's like, even if I want to tell you, you wouldn't get it now. But then she insisted, and he's like, when he's in his late 20s, he's gonna reach something, he's gonna touch a touch a big point, तो वो बता नहीं सकता था ना क्या, and that was, so yeah, anyway, so this journey of self-discovery, I'm not sure if I should talk about the psychedelic journeys at all or not.
No, you can, of course.
And so again,
So you started. So what was the first step? So you started from. So you were back from Hunza. I'm just trying to understand as a layman. So
back from Hunza, and back to school, started studying again, and I was an exceptional student. Topped and aced everywhere.
But you were not focusing on studies, or how were you?
No, the thing is, it would just take me a fraction of the time
Wow.
and I would not, like, if I went to school, I already knew what is being taught and I already knew it. So I would just go to revise at school.
Okay.
And then I wouldn't stop at the school books. Like, if it was economics, if I came across an economist's name, I would go Google it, find out, read about it, what were the ideas. And about every other subject as well, I would delve much deeper into it. So the school books were actually like
dummy books for you.
Yeah, dummy books. Like, and around the exam time, everybody running around tuition. Chilling. I'm playing my sitar and chilling, and I already knew it. I would just probably go through the glossary, just to refresh in the terms for the specific subject, and just go up here, and I would ace it. And I still remember we had a exam in school in preparation for the final exams, and we had a paper on economics. So ऊपर लिखा हुआ था answer any 4 questions, and then there were like 8. So I hadn't read that answer any 4. I answered all the 8 questions.
Right.
And so the teacher comes later to me, he's like, like, which 4 do I mark? मैंने कहा whichever 4 you mark, I'll still ace, don't worry. And so he used to like give me like the older students' papers to mark. It's like किसी को बताना नहीं, you mark these papers, I don't have time.
Wow.
So I was a very good student, and I loved the studying. Really loved studying. And again, I was studying because I wanted to know the truth. Like maybe I find it here, maybe I find it there, maybe they all add up at some point, and I come to a conclusion. Yeah, so I was focused on studies, and then I had to start work at the same time. And then again, there came a point where I couldn't do all of this, So then I had to choose work over studies and focus on the business. And it was Musharraf's time at that point, and lots of foreigners coming, and I was probably one of the gyms that the foreigners would prefer to go to. Just like dollars were coming to Pakistan, dollars were coming to me too, And so I got all the instruments that I didn't have, I started collecting all of those stuff. Jo nahi kiya tha na, started doing those things. And so the poetry went along, and I started, like studying very thoroughly. I started studying the Persian mystics, Maulana Rumi, Sheikh Sadi, Fariduddin Attar, and so on. But again, that emptiness was not being filled. The mind just did not stop from looking. And then I would try to defragment my mind at the end of the day with instruments. And then I got a little interested in psychedelics. And so I had experiments with some of them. But again, they were not for recreational purposes. I just wanted to see maybe,
Maybe that's the way.
Yeah, maybe that's the way. Okay, the shamans do it, and these guys are spiritual healers of the jungle and so on. But again, I realized I'm even more lost now.
Wow. So you did all of that?
I did all of that, but the answer wasn't there.
Sorry.
No, the answer wasn't there. I knew I had to stop the mind from looking, and I knew until the mind is not completely surrendered, this is not going to stop. That the search, and so it really got intense. Now I had the financial stability to pursue it even more, and no distractions.
So but what about your jo Margala wala pura chapter hai?
Yeah,
so
I'm not gonna be able to tell all the details of it. I probably shouldn't on TV. But so this came to a point where a lot of synchronicities started happening around me, like really like out of the world crazy stuff. And if I had to be taught a lesson, I would be taught the lesson in hours. Like, it wouldn't be delayed. I was so close. So I realized that there's a force that so it reminds me of a quote from my own spiritual master, Shams Tabriz. He says, the truth has two hands, but if you look closely, even his left hand is right. So if an event happened, you know, I would say, this is the left hand. This is the left hand coming. So I would try to say, you know, like, Sida Wajo, like, you know, come. Forgot to say, in between this, I actually had a road accident. Went through 5 surgeries, reconstructed the left foot. That was intense. And so that was like, okay, this is the left hand coming, you know. So I was getting a little too carried away with, you know, I was getting swollen by, I was getting eaten up by capitalism, you know, like make more money and all of that. That, you know, like completely devastated me in terms of the energy that I had, you know. It brought me back closer to myself, you know, and realized, man, this body is just a machine. And you're given this body, you know, it's like you're given a car to go from point A to point B, you know. I very vividly realized this is just an instrument of the spirit here. Don't get too attached to it, you know. Yeah, so that actually, like, really made, I was in a wheelchair for months, and I was on crutches for months, and then at the same time I had to run the business. It really, really took me down. But again, back on my feet and started. So yeah, there came points where I would just stare into the mirror and say, man, I know it's within you, but tell me, hey, Kia. Yeah, I'm not sure if I should say these things on TV, but yeah, so like people would come to me and say stuff that were like answers to some question I would have. I would, you know, and it was not like you know, it was just random. It was the universe talking to me. And I realized, okay, this is the universe guiding you. So shuru mein to I'm like, okay, I'm now clinically pagal, like, yeah, I'm gone mad. And then the people who were close to me, when they saw the stuff happening, like, man, kuch ho raha hai, like, samajh nahi aa raha, but kuch ho raha hai. People
are like more or less going on a, obviously, like different paths.
Different, but the story is the same.
In the end of the day, it's
So
people can connect, I think, a lot.
So, okay, well, let's say it. So, we had a book that was given to us by my grandfather. And this grandfather actually named me out of all the siblings. My name he came up with.
And what is the meaning of the name?
Deared, like somebody who is dear.
Say.
Moez. You know, it comes from Izzat.
Say.
You know, or Aziz.
Say.
Moez. Moez is somebody who's dear. And so there was a book that was given to us by my grandfather.
It's like a family book.
Yeah, it was. He had like a huge library.
Say.
Like books you couldn't even find in libraries. He had them, you know, all spiritual stuff. And he would read all of those things all the time. And there was a book, it was called The Third Script. And it was called The Third Script because the book contains conversations that Shams Tabriz had with people or with Rumi or whoever heard him, the time when he was actually spending with Jalaluddin Rumi. Back then people had a good memory, they would just jot down things. And it's examined between Rumi's son, you know, his followers. So it's a very authentic.
And all Persian books, not the translations or
No, these are Persian books.
Proper.
Yeah. It's like, and very, it's like a layman language, but it's very difficult to understand unless you have broken the barriers of the mind. Like you cannot understand them with your physical brain. You have to understand it with your metaphysical mind. Like for instance, it would say, look very closely. Are you far near or are you near far? What? You know, like completely where logic fails. He would make sure that you cripple the mind. And like he says, the mind will take you to the door, but it cannot walk you inside the house. So he's walking from inside the house. And now, so this book is a collection of sayings of Shams Tabriz. And it's called The Third Script because he says that script writer wrote 3 scripts. 1, he could read, so did everybody else. 1, he could read, but nobody else. 1, neither he could read, nor anybody else. Wow. That third script is me. It's like even I don't understand what I talk about. Like I don't understand like who's talking.
Wow. And this is Shams.
This is Shams. So he's basically saying that this is not Shams talking. And so that book, it's called The Third Script, was with us all these years, you know, like from, and I would always see it lying here and there, but never really picking it up. And yeah, so I was very much, very focused in finding the truth. And then everybody around me knew that, but ye iska kaam hi ye aur kuch, he's not gonna. And then synchronicities happening around me, and one day I was living in a separate place, go to my mom's house for dinner, and then she comes while I was walking out. She comes and she's like, you know, maybe you should read this book.
Like out of the blue.
Out of the blue. Okay. And I pick up the book. We're in the car, come inside the house and go to the cave, my own cave, and put it on a table. I don't open it at all. And yeah, it's just strange things, you know. I'm like completely caught up. I know something is about to happen. I don't know what is happening. And I also am very anxious because I know what is about to happen is what I've been asking for, yet it's gonna completely annihilate me. Like I know it's gonna blow me away. So it's like that moth and candle story, you know. You want to get close to the fire, but you know it's gonna burn you. But until you don't go inside the fire, you don't see the secrets. Bring the book home, keep it there. And then a friend of mine comes over. And this is a bachpan ki dost. He was always, you know, we always had spiritual conversations about, we wouldn't talk about movies and none of that stuff. So he was very much like me. Comes home and then on the floor, he sits right next to the door. And I'm like, what's wrong with you, man? Come. He's like, no, I'm okay. And he's like, I'm like very strange. I'm like, yeah, wait, like, what? Is something wrong with you? He's like very chup se and not talking. And out of the blue, he's like, you were Shams and I'm Rumi. I'm like, what did you smoke up? Okay. And he's like, you're Shams and I'm Rumi. And I'm like, it's very funny because I just have Shams's book given to me and it's right on the table. He's like, yeah, that's your manual. And I'm like, wow, okay. Like, okay. So synchronicities, you know. And he's like, why don't you open it? So, okay, fine. Go grab the book, open it. First page, it's written.
And he's also sitting there.
He's sitting there. First page is written, these words will not get to anybody but the one who I want, even if it is after 1,000 years. Shut the book. Like it's like the universe is directly talking to you. Like schizophrenia, you know? Nobody understands what's going on, but you know what's going on. So now words, even on the wall, are speaking, you know? Like, anyway, he leaves and I just couldn't sleep till morning. So
that like one sort of verse was...
Yeah. It was like, there's nowhere to go now. You're in my paws now. Like, this is it.
But why do you think that sort of line sort of hits you itna sort of hard? Because you were reading different stuff pehle bhi.
Actually, I had never come across Shams's sayings. Shams never said a single line of poetry. There are many Shams around, Shams Sabzawari, Shams Multani and all of that. Shams was not a poet. He never said a single line of poetry. And even he used to say that a single word that comes out of my mouth is because of the blessings of Maulana. Like if he wasn't here, you would not hear one word from me. You know? So he was a very introvert, never spoke. And at that point, this is not Shams, so it's the universe and it's me one-on-one, you know. Anyway, so that happens, can't sleep till morning. In the morning, I literally had my heart burst. Now, I don't know, and I think we are not quite scientifically there to probably study what happens when a person actually goes crazy. Like I literally went crazy. And so, yeah, I just didn't know what to do with myself. Ran out of the house and just running. I didn't know what I was doing, where I was going.
You just left the house?
Just left the house, walked towards the mountains. And the stuff that happened on the mountain, not too many people will find out what happened on the mountain, but really crazy. And now everybody at home is like, what happened, you know, where is he?
So you were living in Islamabad?
I was living in Islamabad.
Like,
and I had clients coming in like 2-3 hours later. Like none of that stuff, you know, completely. And so literally there was an explosion or an implosion inside that completely, it was uncontrollable. Anyway, ran back, I came home and I told my mom and everybody. I said, I can't work anymore. This is it for me.
So you went to the Margila Matlab Bandar?
Yeah.
And you were there for 2-3 hours?
Yeah, and then I came back.
So what happened there? That's the main question.
Yeah, a lot of things happened. It's just too much. It basically just didn't know what to do with myself. I knew for sure that I shouldn't be killing myself. But I just didn't know what to do. Like I couldn't understand what's happening to me. And I realized I've gone crazy, clinically schizophrenic, completely crazy. And but I was happy and sad at the same time. I was sad because then I had no control anymore over anything. But I was happy because all my life it actually worked, and this was the point. It's like a deer looking to be hunted, and then you get hunted, you know. So, yeah, and then I came and I'm like, with this state of mind, there's no way I can actually, you know, train people or, you know, work. So I tell my family, like, man, this is it for me. Like, what do you want to do with the whole business, Jim? Yeah.
And you're 20...
Okay, sorry, this is probably around 2012 maybe. So yeah, that's about 10 years ago. So then, and they're like, what do you mean, like, you know? And then, you know, that's it. I just couldn't. I told him, burn it, sell it, do whatever you want. Just can't do it anymore. And then we had the clients come, receive the, you know, payments, whatever we paid, and that's it.
So you like band kar diya?
Band kar diya.
But what did you told them?
Well, some of the ones that were close to me, I sent them a message. I said, guys, like, just no way I can be a normal person right now. And the ones who really understood what I was up for and what I was about, they're like, man, you know, glory to you for all that courage, you know, you're going into it with so much focus, and they appreciated it. And the ones, the normal folks who didn't really know me much, you know, it was like, pata nahi kya hua. So yeah, they closed down the business, and then that's it. All that was there was now this third script in front of me, and I started reading that. And every line was hitting, is like the universe talking to you, you know. And a couple of days before this, I kept going around and saying, I've met a hole in the universe, I've met a hole in the universe, I've met a hole in the universe. And then I didn't know what I'm talking about. And then people They're like, "Acha, okay, what does that mean?" I'm like, "I don't know what it means, but I'm like making a breakthrough." But so my mom called that guy who saw me as a kid. He's like, "Yeah, kya hua isko?" He's like, "Just leave him alone. None of you will get him. Only he will find out, and he will have to go through it. It's a personal journey. Don't try to like control him or whatever." Yeah, so it was back in. Soon it was so much that it just completely had overtaken all aspects of my life, and so I decided to go to the mountains. So I go to the mountains.
So did you go to which mountains?
So the Margala Mountains, and I used to go get my drinking water from.
Shala.
No, from it's after Munal.
Achha.
Probably around 10 minutes after Munal.
Okay.
There's a nice spring there. So first time I went to get water there, this guy had made a little pond in front of that stream so that he can reserve some of the water, na? And udhar upar on the cement it's written Hazrat Ali. Okay.
Say.
This guy comes and and then he's watching me. I'm like, "Aap idhar hote ho?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm here." So I'm like, "What's your name?" He's like, "Hazrat Ali." I said, "No, what's your name?" He's like, "Hazrat Ali." Okay. What kind of name is that? And anyway, so I would go very, very frequently there to get my water, thoda, get some fresh air too. So when that happened and all this stuff happened, I'm like, I'm going. So I went to Hazrat Ali. I went to the guy, and he was one of those construction workers that used to take care of some of this construction equipment. Very close to the road.
And उस time तो वहाँ बना भी कुछ नहीं होगा.
It was my getaway place to begin with. I would go there often. So he lived in a container. It was, and nothing. I picked up my stuff, went there, I started, and then he had, he didn't ask any questions.
You start living with him in the container.
Yeah.
But did you not, bhaijan ko मतलब कौन हो क्या?
He didn't have a problem with it. He actually liked it because he was all alone. Now he had company. And so we would share the food. I would cook.
But did he not ask कि भाई मतलब like what story?
No, he wouldn't. I wouldn't tell him. He wouldn't get it much. So I knew.
But he was like, चलो बंदा बस आ गया बस ठीक है.
So he probably thought like he's having problems he's dealing with.
सही.
So he wouldn't bother me too much. In fact, he enjoyed my company because I was very and yeah, he wasn't bored anymore. Yeah, so.
And you guys were staying there for
I was there, and I had
night.
Couple of instruments. Wake up with sunrise. I had a whole ritual I was following every day, reading stuff and trying to just make sense out of the situation. And I was there for many months. Long beard.
Many months.
Yeah, long beard, long hair, like completely gone insane. And there came a point where my health was really deteriorating, like really bad. Lost so much weight, wasn't eating food at all. And then family asked me, and I knew if I stay here I'm gonna perish. Like there's no way I'm gonna. It's not where it should be going. And so I came back and.
But what realization did you get there? Yeah, what were sort of.
It was intense. So after the episode where, so something I forgot to say, that when I came back from the mountain that day when I closed the gym down, I come home and mom still doesn't know that I've left. And so I receive a message from mom. She's like, "Do you know today's Rumi's birthday?" What? I'm like, okay. And no idea. And then my brother messages like, the magnetic poles of the sun shifted today. I'm like, what does that even mean? And it's too much. I'm like, bas kar de yaar. I don't want to know anything now. But what happened, physiologically speaking, my whole perception of reality changed after that incident. I started hearing things not from the outside anymore, but from the inside. Like I started seeing things this wasn't outside now, it was all inside me. That was just reflection. Like if a bird is chirping, the reality was inside me, but the image was outside. And this is huge. Like, basically the mind that protects you from insanity, when the doors open, you're insane. You're actually insane. So now here you need to know what to ignore, what to, actually accept. Which voice do you actually go with, which voice you don't go with. And this is perhaps where modern psychology still needs work. So because they tag everybody, isko ye, not knowing that all the spiritual journeys, this is the midpoint. You have to, after the search starts, there will come a point where you will lose it, and everything that you knew that was true will fall apart, So there was physiological changes, and I could feel it taking place. It was just too much to handle. The last thing I needed was more stimulation. I wanted it to cool. I wanted the water to get calm, and so I could see a little closely what's happening. All that storm could not help. So yeah, then after many months, I was forced to come back, and came back, stopped eating. Wasn't eating at all. There was a mali we had, and I would wake up every morning, help with the mali, and after a couple of days, he's like, "Beta, udhar bhi grass pada ho gaya." He would drink his tea, and he would have me do the work. I'm like, okay. And then I have clients messaging and calling, "Ki yaar, back mein dard hai, ye hai, please can you take out some time?" I'm like, guys, not working anymore. I'm done with this. So yeah, I came back. There was a point where I went on a food strike. Like, I wasn't eating. I just did not. The transcendental experience was so much. It was so much. Okay, you did not want any distraction. Like, it would completely, if you left me in a place, I would be there until the body just completely falls apart. I was completely elsewhere. And so yeah, the health got worse and worse, and then there came a point where I wasn't eating at all. And there came a point where I couldn't even sit anymore. Like, if I was lying down, I had to get help to sit up, and then probably stay there for a couple of minutes, and then go on my knees, and then stand up. Like, I couldn't even stand up anymore. And then one night, it was like the spirit is saying, okay, do I leave? Do I don't? Do I come back? Do I leave? Do I come back? It was like a pull, push. And if that line snapped, I would probably just pass away. And then it was a very intense experience at night I had. And then when I came back, I'm like, what are you doing? Is this how you're gonna carry on? And so I said, man up, man. Get up and fight it through. So I made a decision, same day, started eating, I said, okay, let's see what's next now, this is no way, need to carry on.
But were you fulfilled about what you were looking for?
I was happy because now I could feel life, Us waqt I was just like an outside observer. Now life was me. The mind had no more any questions. The questions just completely went.
But physically you were very weak.
Yeah, physically I was weak, and that was because there was so much happening. There's psychosis, there's hallucinations, and a lot of stuff happening. I probably would perish if I had not had 20-something years of sitting alone, playing music, and having a lot of inner experiences, inner journeys. Because when you're playing these spiritual zikr instruments, you get very used to being in the interiors of your spirit. The West calls it hallucination.
Yeah.
We call it kashf shuhud. You discover and you witness, and it's just a completely different world. Call it third eye, call it whatever you want. So I was very used to that space. What I wasn't used to was, this immense feeling of not being in the world anymore, but the world being in you. You know, like this whole image had completely inverted. And that was too much to digest. And so what I didn't know, not probably having a teacher or a spiritual master to tell me ki yaar ab bas kar do, ab go kaam karo, you know, like try to balance it out, because I was completely like on one side, and then I'm like, dude, like this, you know, like don't. And so having Shams's book with me brought my sanity back also. So I would always think, okay, what would he do? What would he say?
And you were reading it every single day?
Every single day. Like I literally know every line by heart now. And so sometimes some people send me a quote from Shams. I'm like, yeah, he's not from him. You know, and they're like, how would you know? They go search, it's not like, how did you know? I'm like, I just know his character so much now that I know this cannot be from him. So I would always reflect, okay, what would he do? What would he say? You know. So that really helped in bringing me back. So yeah, I started eating now, and then I'm like, okay, and then, you know, I had these clients like saying, yaar, back issue hai, they say, please take out some time. I'm like, man. And then I'm like, you know what, better than helping the Mali, you know, help some people, you know, some stuff, you know, you can help some people out. It's okay. And like the Prophet says, there's no monkhood in Islam. You know, it's being a coward, you know, if you find it and you go on a mountain, you need to come back. And a meditative state of mind does not have to be in a silent room. You can be in the field of battle and yet carry it. It doesn't have to do it. If it gets disturbed by external things, then it's not a meditative mind. Whatever comes, that space remains there, you know. Before I know it, I was back into it again. I started working from home, would see a couple of people here and there, and before I knew it, and there was no space, and I'm out looking for spaces.
Wow.
Yeah, so things are the same, but they're very different now. You know, and so I've been trying to what the Sufis say, not take the whole jar, but take it cup by cup. You know, and there needs to be balance. You know, you need to work a little of the body, a little bit of the spirit. Take all of them along. Because if you overdo either one, that balance will not come. So yeah, and you know, I'm happy how it has worked out so far. But looking back, also I know that was just the start, the beginning of the inner journey, the actual inner journey with some material, you know, and. So looking forward to the rest of it, you know.
So let's talk a little bit about Maulana Rum and Shams. Like, what do you think? So I was reading somewhere that in Iran, there are like festivals jahan lakhon log aate hain. And these are like, let's call it like not a Sufi festival, but like a literature and, you know, like a mix. But if you see in Pakistan, generally, I think we haven't उस तरीके के साथ picked it up. और जो चल भी रहा है वो पता नहीं कितने fake quotes, like whatever I get I send it to you. या वो ये सही है क्या सीन है? और बहुत सी जो definition भी जो इसकी translation हुई वो सारी गोरों ने की. अब वो ज़ाहिर है वो literal meaning and everything. So what do you get out of like all of this? Like do you think the whole sort of essence, like did we sort of forgetting day by day? मतलब उस तरह I feel like we didn't like pick नहीं हमने उसको किया पूरा.
Yes. Well, we haven't understood them very clearly, and people only see as much of Shams or as much of Rumi as they have seen themselves. You know, like you can only know him as much as you are, and like other chaps did meet Shams, nothing happened. Rumi met him and he completely went insane. You know, like what did he see? And he says when he was a very young chap, he entered the gathering of the Sufis, and he's like, when they saw me, he's like, one of them started hitting himself with the shoe, one of them started rolling on the floor, and the sheikh was just staring at me. And then he's like, I go to them and say, somebody who has seen one limb of the elephant is one thing, the one who has seen the whole elephant is another. Like, you still haven't seen the whole elephant, you know?
Yeah.
So, you can't really expect people who live normal lives to be really able to understand what these people were all about. But it is very, it's a huge event, the meeting of these two oceans in the spiritual world, especially in societies that have a background and a tradition of mysticism, because these things don't happen too often. It's very much like the meeting of, say, Moses and Khizr, or the meeting of two very learned men. One knows the, Sharia and all of that stuff, and the other one is a master of the inner world. So definitely, and there's always hijackers of religion, a lot of people who want to cash on it.
But you have read like the actual sort of scripts, not like the translations. जो general story एक वो पढ़ने को मिलती है कि how did they both मुलाकात हुई. So what's the actual story? Because there are like 3-4 versions. One is like he was in a madrasa और वो आए और उन्होंने किताबें फेंक दी. But एक ये कि वो I think वो कुछ sermon कर रहे थे, बैठे हुए थे, वो उठ के वहाँ से चले गए.
These are more refuted events, but what is very much documented is that Rumi's walking through the streets in Konya, and there comes a man, walks up to him, and he says, "You who know it all, who was greater, the Prophet, who said, 'Glory unto you,' or Bayezid Bastami, who was a huge spiritual master, and when he would get into his transpersonal altered states of consciousness, he would say, 'Glory unto me for my greatness.'" So the question he asked was, who was greater, the Prophet, who would say, "Glory unto you," or Bayezid, who would say, "Glory unto me"? And Rumi freezes. But what my understanding is, he does not freeze because he didn't have the answer. He did have the answer. A learned man. He'd studied all these people and he had all the answers. What he froze about was, who's the guy? And Shams says it himself. He says, "They sent me for him." And he had met him many years before this actual event. And he's like, "You weren't ready for it yet. I had to wait so that you get it."
So it's not the first time they were meeting Vase. So
they had met, maybe not really had a conversation, or maybe didn't, but he had met him. He had known him, he had been looking, he'd been looking out, but he's like, "You weren't ready for it yet."
Wow.
So he had to wait and come back when he's more mature, and when he's exhausted his own resources, because at that point Rumi was completely unsatisfied. He knew all, but he's still like, like in his room, he's like, "I don't know anything." And so they sent him to go, and the rest is history. Is a very, and this is not in the spiritual people who follow spiritual events. This is just not a normal. Shams was told when he was a kid that because he was a very silent man, like he wouldn't talk too much. He was told by one of his sheikhs that you will meet a man who will become your tongue. And Rumi, when he was a child, when they were escaping the Mughal invasion, because his dad was a very well-known scholar, so wherever he would go, he would meet the spiritual teachers of the area, pay respect and move on. So when they reached Neshabur, they meet Fariduddin Attar, and Fariduddin Attar is a huge name in the spiritual community. And when Fariduddin Attar sees them, he says, "How is an ocean walking behind a river?" Wow. Looking at the sun behind the dad. So he gives him one of his books, and he says, "When you grow up, you study it." Of course, he would understand as a young child. And then he says that he will grow to burn the already cooked ones, talking about spiritual people. जो पके हुए हैं ना उनको भी जला देगा. And that meeting is it's a huge event in the spiritual world. And Shams also says, he says like I was water boiling on myself, and it's like it hit Rumi and it just started pouring like.
Wow.
So it's very symbolic in many aspects. The teacher student relationship, the fact that you have to completely surrender to the master, that the master, even if he's actually putting you through hard stuff, he wants the good for you. It's a proper relationship of a true master.
What do you think is the whole essence of all of this? The whole like Sufism essence, or like let's say Shams's sort of poetry, or like whatever, jitna bhi unhone likha. So what's the essence in the end?
Love. There's nothing else. Just love. Is celebration of life. It's just whatever comes into words, we cannot actually understand it with the words. It's something to be lived. There are many paths. Some of them are dukan, and some of them will actually get you there. There's not one way or the other, but these two stand out because Rumi was prolific. It's intense. Like you open up this stuff and it's just mind-boggling. We do have so many others before him, and they all are. And even Rumi himself is like, and even Shams himself is like, in Tabriz, there are hundreds of people greater than me. Like he doesn't come out and say, I'm it all. Yet again, when you talk about the spiritual world, it can be very different. At one time, he might say, I'm the greatest, there's nothing beyond me, but he would also. The essence of it, this is it, truth, find the truth for your own self. Like Rumi says, do not be satisfied with stories, unfold your own myth. Like find out who you truly are.
It's like a self-awareness, and
it's a journey into the self. And these people are the guides of the spiritual world. And that's what Rumi says, if you want to set out into the ocean, don't ask those who never left the shore. He's like, come to me, I'm a fortress invincible. He can take you from A to Z, guiding you throughout, explaining you things. And he hated poetry. He was grown up as a scholar. He didn't like poetry. But, he's like, but what other choice? How else can I actually communicate what I have? Or Shams would say, there's this thing inside me, I'm baffled how people are happy without it.
Which is your favorite poem?
Poem, there's so many. But
can you recite like few lines?
Rumi is actually an explanation of Shams. Rumi, when you understand Rumi, you will find who Shams was. Just so many. I can't pick one probably. I can't pick one. They're all beautiful. But what stands out for me all the time is Shams. His statements, because they're very short, very precise. They make things very simple. He contemporarizes Islam. He brings it, and the stuff that he says and the statements that he has left will always make sense regardless of the time or location that you are born or living in.
Yeah, one of my, I think, favorite, बल्कि मैंने शायद अपने कमरे में भी उसको रखा हुआ है. There is one out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. There is a field.
There's a field. I'll meet you
there.
So the actual Persian words for wrongdoing and wrongdoing is actually kufr iman. Kufr and iman. He says beyond kufr and iman, there is a space. I'll meet you there. So this was picked up by the Goras.
Yeah. But if you see, like, it's a huge, like, translation gap.
It's a very huge translation gap.
The thing is, kufr and iman is something else. Right doing and wrong. It's
but it completely changes the understanding of the poem. Wrongdoing, and you can think about it as for anything. Like koi sahi or galat hai nahi. But then you have kufr iman. So what he's trying to say is, like, beyond kufr and iman, we are in that space. Breaking the shackles of,
अभी जैसे एक और अक्सर लोगों ने बल्कि स्टेटस पे लगाए होते हैं, what you seek is seeking you. इतनी ज़्यादा उसकी वो.
Yes.
If you read the.
Well, that is less likely to get deciphered wrongly, and it's a journey of all of us. Bayezid Bastami, he says, for 30 years, I prayed and was seeking him. And then in the end, I realized it was him seeking me, not. And Shams says, he says, I didn't choose the path chose me. So whenever you're remembering God, you're not remembering God, you're being remembered. So it's the other way. So what you seek is seeking you. It can be at many levels, but when it comes to Rumi, I think we should see him in the light of spirituality mostly, because he probably doesn't have too much to talk about the material stuff. He's a spiritual guide, and most of this stuff should be taken in light of spirituality.
So my last question: if there is someone like a normal human, जिसने let's say जिसको बहुत ज़्यादा context नहीं है, knowledge नहीं है, and a lot of questions which you get is, अच्छा ठीक है, I am interested in finding the truth. Where should I start from?
Yeah. So this is the Shams clears this up very nicely. He talks about a person who has found a map to a treasure, and on the map it's written, you go to this location and you hold the bow, you face this direction, you hold the bow and arrow and throw. And so he goes to that direction, holds the arrow, he shoots, and where the arrow falls, starts digging it, finds nothing, goes to the location, faces the direction, holds it, throws the arrow, again starts digging. He keeps hitting it harder, and then he calls some people who are stronger to hit it even harder. Doesn't find the treasure. And then he goes to a wise guy. He's like, I know there is a treasure somewhere, and this is the map for it, lekin wo mil nahi raha hai. He's like, tell me. And then he's like, show me. Sees it, and then he's like, it's written, you go to that location, you face this direction, you hold an arrow and a bow, and you throw. Didn't say a pull. You just dig there, right there. So it's right there. You don't have to go too far. It's so close, we miss it. It's like fish in the ocean asking, where's water? You're in it, Which reminds me of a very nice quote that I love from Shams, where he describes the consciousness of an awakened man in the world. He says, the fish looks at the ocean and is baffled by how huge the ocean is. And the ocean looks at the fish and it says, I can't understand how something so much bigger than me is inside me. So this is the state of mind of somebody like Shams. He's bigger than the cosmos. Yet, so this is how the consciousness completely flips when you break the barriers of the mind and you go beyond logic and questions and answers. It's what is stopping you is yourself. But again, it's something that yet you cannot find it until you set out.
You need to be hungry.
You need to be hungry. You need to exhaust the mind where it completely gets crippled and says, yeah, I just can't. And that moment where you completely, truly and honestly give up, the grace will probably come. Some run and some crawl. They both will.
Yeah.
They will both get there. It's not the speed. It's not. I think what it is about. It's about being honest with yourself. And like Sham says, this is not the work of the forehead. It's the work of the heart. I think being honest with yourself and truly asking yourself, okay, am I doing the right thing or not? Yet again, some people who also follow the very formal and old school traditions of religion, they can also read. It's not a monopoly of anybody, and I think you can reach. It's the intention, you know. It's really setting it. It's really being looking for yourself. It's going to come at some point or another. Which reminds me from another story of Maulana. There's a king who sends a guy out into the city, go jao ye kaam karo. So the guy goes there and he gets distracted, you know, he does this thing, the other thing. He comes back and the king's asking, did you do what he's like, oh, like I did A, B, C, D, but wo wala main bhul gaya. He's like, I sent you out for one thing only. Tumne sab kuch kar liya, but this one. So he's trying to say, you're here just for one thing. You go do everything else, but forget what you were actually sent for. So as long as you remind yourself, you know, why you're here, soon I think you should be home.
Amazing. I mean, there is so much to talk about and, you know, like explore like the whole world of Sufism and mysticism. And, you know.
I think it's a direction that you will never regret, and everything will become more of what it is as you go forward. You will never have or appreciate life less if you set out in this direction.
Moez, I have a last request. Okay. So, अगर थोड़ा सा music अगर आप play कर सकें for the team and for the audience.
Okay. There's a lot that can be done, but in a short while.
Sure. Like a quick, you know, थोड़ा सा. Thank you. We'll again inshallah invite you for I was thinking to talk about like the whole philosophy which you told me about health and fitness, because it's like another world when you go to the other gyms, you know?
I think you did there, right? Because I was very confused, like what we're going to talk about, But each of these is so vast.
It's just like another
completely different mindset.
Exactly. But we'll have these settings often now.
Okay.
So we'll invite you again and again. Okay. I'm telling you in advance, you need to take some time out.
Sure.
But thank you so much for today. Sure. It was truly an honor, and there is so much to learn from you every day.
Thank you so much for inviting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.